Welcome back to Tiny Grimes Games, and today I want to talk to you about Baratheon Neil as an archetype. A lot of people have said that it's the strongest archetype right now, and I would tend to agree with that. But what some people have said is that it is going to always be the best archetype, and it is somehow oppressively strong and hurts the future of Game of Thrones. And I'm here to tell you today, I just don't think that's the case. I think, yes, it's good now, but to think that it will always be good because it is good now, I think is missing some of the key reasons to why Baratheon is so good right now. So let's take a look. To start with, there's better consistency from top to bottom right now in Baratheon than for most other houses. And what I mean by that is, top to bottom, the cards you can draw in a Baratheon fealty deck are always pretty good. You have a couple cards that aren't quite as good, but they still fill a role. Now let's take Stark, for instance. Let's say you want to run a Stark fealty deck because you want to be able to capitalize on Gates of Winterfell, which is a great draw card. The problem is you're forced to run a bunch of cards that you probably wouldn't want to run otherwise. The Direwolf package right now just isn't quite strong enough. Will it be strong in the future? Probably. But for today, it seems a little bit underpowered, especially compared to, say, the cards you're able to match in a Baratheon deck. So for someone like Stark, you're left in a really difficult position. Do I add in another faction to add consistency, but in the process lose consistency out of my draw effect from Gates of Winterfell, or even have to give it up entirely? And so either way, you're losing consistency by adding that other faction into Stark, whereas Baratheon doesn't have to worry about this. Locations is another place where Baratheon has a huge edge. Baratheon has not one, but two great locations, and they have perhaps the best location in the game in the Red Keep. This will even out over time as more factions get better locations. There ends up being that cap as to how many good locations you can use before you have to start picking and choosing between them. Right now, factions get stuck with, wow, I would love having another really good location. I just don't have it, so I'm not going to run another location. Baratheon doesn't have that problem. Another spot is events. Baratheon has great events. Baratheon has two of the best events in the game, in Consolidation of Power and Seen in Flames. And then their third event is still very good. I consider it to be quite good. Other people say it's not that good, but either way, ours is the Fury can offer serious blowout plays, and to be able to go 3 events deep successfully out of the core set is really impressive. And this becomes yet another issue of why Baratheon is stronger. And then lastly, we have draw. So you're probably seeing a pattern here, right? Baratheon excels in every aspect of the game. So Baratheon has one of the best draw effects in the game in the Red Keep. Other houses don't have quite as good of draw. But what's interesting is the Red Keep itself even will become less good over time as more factions have more ways to put out better characters that stop power challenges, whether this be with stealth or just bigger, beefier guys or other effects to stop Baratheon from being able to win these power challenges. Regardless, the Red Keep will get worse, other factions will get better at draw, and this will start to even out. Now, one of the places that people are really worried is with just Neil as an archetype. So I'd like to talk about Neil now and in the future. So some are worried that Neil will always be oppressive and keep Baratheon on top and be a problem for the metagame. And I really disagree with this. The honest truth is if you look through Baratheon, they don't have a lot of Neil. Melisandre is limited to 1 target per turn. That's really not that much. So Baratheon's brand of soft control relies heavily on the fact that your opponents don't have a lot of great cards, right? And so the core set is pretty much the zenith of their opportunities, because as we flesh out the card pool more down the line, more factions are going to get better characters who are solid and oftentimes at a cheaper spot. So for instance, right now, if your opponent takes their whole turn and plays Balon or plays Ned Stark, sure, that's great. Those cards are wonderful. The problem is Melisandre going 1 for 1, getting effect and kneeling them is super strong. But in the future, when your opponent plays, 3 good guys at 3 cost, kneeling one of them is really not going to do that much. So it's going to be interesting to see how Baratheon reacts to this. Unless Baratheon control can pick up a whole bunch of kneel cards that are not R'hllor based, I don't think it's going to be able to keep up this this oppressive spot where it can kneel out their best card, because your opponent's going to have a number of best cards. It's not going to be like it is now where Wildfire, if you put out too many good characters, just crushes you because you don't have more good characters coming. In the future, your deck is going to be full of good characters. You won't have to run 3 of all your best guys. You'll run 1 to 2 of a whole bunch of good guys. If someone dies and you have more in hand, oh well, someone died, I got more in hand, no big deal. Another situation that I think will change is Mel dying. It's pretty tough to kill Mel right now. I mean, you basically have to win a military challenge and put her to the sword. Most people are not going to run into a Dracarys with Mel. She's just too critical. And I think we're going to see as we move on, there'll be more ways to handle one single character, whether it's blanking effects or killing effects or discard effects, some way to keep Mel neutralized. I have a hard time believing that one card dominate the game the way Mel does in the future. Coupled with this, I think there's going to be more answers to Neil just in general. I think there's going to be more effects that cancel Neil. I think there's going to be more stand effects. There's just going to be more ways to work around Neil. So there's 2 problems for the future for this Baratheon deck. First, soft control does not work that well when there's tons of good characters on the board, and this is going to happen at some point. Second of all, the effects are going to get canceled and worked around much easier. For me, the funny thing is when I looked at the Baratheon package from the core set at first glance, I thought, this isn't viable. There just isn't enough Neil. But the problem is I was thinking with a 1.0 mindset. That being that there's lots of good characters on the board, and Melisandre's just not going to be enough to lock them down. And I was wrong on that because of the way the core set works, and especially how the meta has developed with most people running 2 to 3 big guys. But like I said, that's going to change. I think my initial perception of Baratheon will end up being right in the future unless more cards come out. So in short, yes, Baratheon is great. It very, very well may be the top deck for now. But I think this is more of a function of an immature card pool rather than some sort of design, archetypal flaw, or problem. Basically, my answer to you is, don't panic. The sky isn't falling. Game of Thrones is not forever going to be dominated by kneeling effects and make you want to pluck your eyes out as you play. But be ready to bend the knee at Worlds. So I'll see you next time for Tiny Grimes Games.